Welcome back to Mighty Habits. I'm Steven, and today we're going to be diving into something pretty fascinating. We're going to be looking at how religion and politics and American culture, they all kind of blend together. Have you ever noticed how those things are kind of like, when you make a weird smoothie? Separately the ingredients are fine, but once you mix them all up, it gets a little interesting. Well, that's what we're going to be exploring today. We're going to be uncovering how some beliefs and ideologies have kind of become all mixed up together over time. And we're going to see how they've shaped the cultural landscape, not just in America, but even beyond. So get ready for some pretty surprising connections. You know, those aha moments where you rethink everything. It's kind of like we're going on a cultural safari, but instead of lions and tigers and bears, oh my, we're going to be tracking down those elusive ideas that shape how people see the world. And we're going to be looking at all this through the lens of a particular religious and political movement. So big questions we'll be tackling. How did certain images, like the rugged cowboy, become so connected to faith?
How do certain groups view masculinity and strength? And what role does anger play in all of this? So buckle up, get ready, because we're about to go deep into a movement that has captivated millions of people and sparked some pretty passionate debates. This deep dive promises to be a real thought-provoking exploration of how these seemingly separate worlds, religion, politics, and culture, they all collide, and ultimately, they create the reality that we live in. Okay, so let's get into this whole idea of muscular Christianity. It's kind of a weird term when you first hear it, right? You think about Christianity, and usually you associate it with peace and love, turning the other cheek, that sort of thing. But then you throw muscular into the mix. It's like mixing, hot sauce and a milkshake. A little unexpected. But this whole idea of combining masculinity and strength with faith, it's actually a pretty powerful force, and it has a long and kind of complicated history. Basically, we're talking about the image of the tough, self-reliant Christian man, ready to defend his beliefs, protect his family, his community, like a spiritual warrior, but with a Bible instead of a sword. To understand this, we're kind of going to go back in time a bit. See, this idea of muscular Christianity really started gaining traction back in the late 1800s. Part of it was a reaction to, anxieties about how society was changing. There was this feeling that men were becoming, softer. Think about what was happening back then. Industrialization, cities growing, all these big shifts. And some people felt like traditional masculinity was being threatened. So this movement really emphasized physical strength, being athletic, getting out into nature. They saw those as ways to cultivate what they considered to be real Christian manhood. They believed that being active and living a rugged lifestyle, it built character. It helped men resist temptation. So it wasn't just about, lifting weights or anything. It was about embodying this ideal of Christian masculinity. They felt it was crucial for having a strong society. And speaking of strong men, this is where John Wayne enters the picture. The ultimate cowboy, rugged individualism, American grit, the whole package. Now you might be thinking, what does John Wayne have to do with religion? And that's where things get really interesting. For a lot of folks, especially in the evangelical movement, John Wayne was way more than just a movie star. He represented something bigger, a set of values, courage, self-reliance, patriotism, and a strong moral compass. He was the tough guy who always fought for what he thought was right, protector of the innocent, the American hero. And those values really resonated with a certain segment of American Christianity. They saw in John Wayne a reflection of their own beliefs about masculinity, strength, and faith. He was an icon, a symbol of a way of life that they felt was under attack. But this whole fusion of faith and masculinity, it's led to some pretty complicated and controversial stuff. Some people argue that it creates a very narrow view of what it means to be Christian, a view that can be hostile to women, to LGBTQ plus individuals, anyone who doesn't fit those traditional gender roles. And it can also contribute to a culture of aggression, a tendency to see everything in black and white terms, us versus them. So we see how this image, this ideal of the strong masculine Christian, has had a huge impact on American culture and politics. It's been used to justify a lot of things. War, violence, opposition to social justice movements, it's all tied in. But there's even more to this story. This whole idea of muscular Christianity, it also raises some questions about how faith and anger are connected, because when we really look closely at this movement, we see a certain type of anger that tends to pop up, a righteous anger, a sense of grievance and outrage at what they see as attacks on their values, their way of life. It's a feeling that the world has gone off track, that traditional morality is under siege, and that they need to fight back. And this anger, it's not just some abstract feeling. It has real consequences. It fuels political movements. It influences how people vote, how they engage with social issues. It's a driving force. So we're not just talking about history or theology here. We're talking about the forces that shape our world today, the beliefs that motivate people's actions, and how religion and politics get all tangled up together, creating this, well, this really potent and sometimes pretty volatile mix. So we've been talking about this idea of muscular Christianity, its history and how it's played out in American culture.
John Wayne, the cowboy ideal, all these images that have become so tied up with faith and masculinity. And we've even touched on that, complicated relationship between faith and anger. Here's where things get even more interesting. We've seen how this movement, with its focus on strength and those traditional values, it's gotten really connected to politics. It's almost like they feed off each other. This idea of muscular Christianity, it shapes political views, and then those political views, well, they circle back and make the movement even stronger. It's a powerful force, and it helps explain why some issues like gender roles, sexuality, family values, all that stuff, why they become such hot-button topics in American politics. Think about it. That whole emphasis on traditional gender roles, the idea that men are the protectors and providers, well, it fits right in with certain political agendas. Like, it's used to justify being against things like abortion rights or LGBTQ plus equality. The argument is that those things threaten the natural order, that they go against how God intended things to be. And then you got that anger, that righteous anger we talked about.
It's a powerful motivator. It gets people out to vote. It fuels those fundraising campaigns. It drives all that online activism you see. And politicians, right? Well, they know how to tap into that anger. They stoke it, use it to push their own agendas. Now, it's important to remember that not everyone who considers themselves evangelical or buys into this whole muscular Christianity thing, they don't all fit neatly into one box. There are all sorts of viewpoints within these groups. People hold a wide range of beliefs. But it's clear that these ideas, they've had a major impact on American politics and culture. So what does this mean for you? Well, for one, it can help us understand why some of those political debates get so heated, why people feel so strongly about these issues. It's not just about policies. It goes deeper than that. It's about deeply held beliefs about faith, family, and what it means to be a good person. But it also makes us think critically about the messages we're bombarded with every day. The images and stories that shape how we see the world. Because whether we realize it or not, those things have a big impact on how we think, how we vote, and how we treat each other.
So as you keep exploring and trying to make sense of this world, this crazy, complicated world, keep asking those questions. Don't just accept things at face value. Look for different perspectives. And remember, even the simplest ideas can have some pretty big consequences. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those mighty habits strong.